people say you must respect each era, but the past eras don't respect this era.
I don't think that's true.
You don't see some of the things these guys say? Yeah, I don't think that respect is passed down to us from the other generations, but I think people are quick to say, "Oh, you got to respect them because they came before." Nah, I don't agree with that. Here's another thing, though, BD.
You absolutely have to.
I'm not. My mama ain't raised me that way.
Absolutely respect the people who came before you.
My respect is earned, and what you did to somebody else don't necessarily earn you respect.
Draymond says a lot of stuff on his podcast, but I knew this was going to be the comment that was going to get Stephen A. Smith's reaction. Think about it. The only reason Stephen A. was talking so much about that LeBron podcast was because Ron said that Giannis would score 250 points in a game in the 70s. And that type of thing is right down Stephen A.'s alley. He relishes over calling out modern NBA players if he feels like they stepped out of line and talked down on a past era. That's his thing. He talks poorly about the current state of the NBA, but only has good things to say about how things used to be. So, Draymond felt like he needed to call out Stephen A. on his hypocrisy, specifically on his feud with LeBron, because throughout the beef, Stephen A. brought up Kobe's funeral and was trying to suggest that LeBron really wasn't at the funeral, which was actually a lie, and when it was confirmed that Bron was there, he backtracked and was like, "Why didn't anybody see you there?" Which is like, what is that even supposed to mean? Eventually, Stephen A. apologized, but that sealed his loss in that beef. But it seems like he's ready to make another enemy with yet another NBA player, and this could be a pretty interesting beef because both of these guys have a platform. Draymond has his podcast, and Stephen A. has his own show in First Take. Speaking of First Take, Stephen A. called out Draymond's comments about how modern NBA players don't have to give the players before them respect because all the older players do is talk negative about them.
Stephen A., does Dre have a point?
No, he does not. He doesn't have a point when you only make half the point. It's a whole different level of athleticism, resources, medical advances, etc. Those players think about those things, the old school guys. They think about the advantages that these guys have, something as simple as travel. They think about all these things, and they're like, you have any idea what we went through to have to perform? And you just want to ignore all of that when it comes to us? Nah, and that's what I'm saying. So it's not that Draymond doesn't have a point, it's that he's leaving out where the disrespect emanates from and how to some degree it's instigated by some of the modern day players because they got their bag and there's an absence of deference and respect that they have for those who paved the way for them.
Why is Stephen A. trying to act like these older players are forgotten? I'm referring to when he was talking about how the older players, they had to perform without as many resources and that they don't get enough credit for that. But for me, I just don't think that's true. The NBA does a great job giving the past their flowers. The logo of the NBA is literally Jerry West. It's not Jordan, it's not LeBron, it's Jerry West. That's a nod of respect. Plus, you gotta think this through. Anytime there's a debate between a player of the past versus a current one, most people are going to favor the older one just because that's the kind of culture we've created. Draymond was right when he said that older players can disrespect the younger players, but whenever they keep that same energy, it's now a problem. Stephen A. literally talks poorly about these players for a living, so he's a part of the problem too. That whole LeBron beef, that was him talking negative about current players. And he's also the one who turns a blind eye to players of the past who aren't showing respect. And isn't past players showing jealousy of current players' resources disrespectful? A player like Giannis can't control the era he was born in and the resources he's got. Yes, he has some advantages, but that doesn't change the fact that he's better. That doesn't take away from his talent either. It just seems that Stephen A. is admitting that a lot of the old guys are just bitter. What's the point of saying that a certain player today wouldn't survive in the past? Like, okay, sure, maybe that's true, or not. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. They don't play in the past, they play right now. And that's what a lot of older fans don't understand. Thankfully, though, Molly tries to put Stephen A. in his place.
But Draymond's talking about they're disrespected as like players on the court. All these other factors that you're bringing up have nothing to do with playing on the court.
That is patently false.
Stephen A. and their
That's
play and their
false.
talent. Yes, maybe it's a little bit of an advantage, but why should they be disrespected for things that they can't even control?
Well, first of all, nobody should be disrespected. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is because of the conditions under which they're playing, which facilitates them being able to focus on their game, players who came before them that didn't have that luxury feel resentment towards them because of it. And sometimes that's interpreted as disrespect because you're not taking all of those other things into consideration.
What if they had those conditions in the past? They wouldn't rise up and overcome them as well and be stars?
Well, we're talking about
But I'm saying it should go both ways.
Okay, Molly. Okay, I tried.
So Molly was saying exactly what I was thinking. You can't blame modern NBA players for the resources that they've got. And in the same breath, Stephen A. is trying to say that modern NBA players aren't supposed to be saying, oh, well, the 70s players weren't that good, and not taking into account that they didn't have the same resources. But at the same time, he's trying to say that the modern NBA players are getting disrespected because they aren't lacking resources. But at the same time, it feels like he's more so explaining where the older players' beef with the modern players is without necessarily calling it out. And I feel like he doesn't want to call it out because he knows he's kind of one of the people that's involved with this hating on the modern NBA. Although he's not a player, he's always talking down on them. And Molly made a good point when she said that it should go both ways, which means if Stephen A. thinks the older players should be respected because they didn't have the same resources, and with the same resources they'd be better, which is fair, then it's only right if Stephen A. can respect that if today's player was in a previous era, he'd be able to adjust just as well. That's what I don't understand. In these hypotheticals, or what if so-and-so, just think of any 70s, 80s, 90s players, played in today's league, he'd average 50 because he'd adjust and be able to start knocking down threes. But if, let's say I say Giannis would be even better in a past era, they'd be like, no, he couldn't adjust to the physicality. That doesn't make any sense. So you're telling me that your guy can adjust to become a floor spacer, but the more recent player Giannis can't play through some hacks? That doesn't sit right with me. And one of the people who constantly does that is Mad Dog, and he's gonna have something to say about this whole thing.
Who responded this past week to what LeBron said about Giannis? I didn't hear one player from the 80s say, he didn't know what he's talking about. We would have knocked him down his rear end. He never would have gotten a layup. Because in those days in the 80s, no layups. Giannis wouldn't have gotten a layup. He would have been on the ground every time he drove to the basket. He would have had to make his free throws.
I knew he was going to go there. I knew he was going to say something like that because this has been an argument that he's said time and time again. I don't understand why he would want to brag about that when he's trying to uplift the 70s. Fouling is not a skill. Fouling is an unskilled move. It shows that you couldn't guard the player that you were trying to guard, so you had to foul them instead. To be honest, his comment makes me think that he doesn't watch basketball. Does he not realize that teams already tried to do that to Giannis? They already tried to force foul him, so he has to go to the line. That's not a new strategy. They did that with Shaq and he was still dominant. So I don't understand why he thinks that if Giannis was in the 70s, they would just foul him so much that Giannis would be useless. Because when a team fouls that much, Giannis' team would get in the bonus and they'd be at an advantage. Plus, Giannis can finish through contact as well. So, overall, I just think that was a bad point.
If Draymond switched his verbiage, and what if he had said, rather than former players, what if he had said the media?
Well, I mean,
Would that be a more accurate statement?
Probably.
Okay, thank you. Monica?
You see, those are the types of questions that should be asked to Mad Dog and Stephen A. That was a good one, because Mad Dog was so caught off guard that he accidentally answered with the truth. He does have no respect for today's game. He agreed that Draymond's statement that older players don't have respect for today would be more accurate if he said that it was the reporters and media personalities that were doing the disrespecting. I appreciate that he kept his response genuine. He is a hater of today's game. These guys are supposed to be unbiased, but throughout the LeBron and Stephen A beef, it became obvious that Stephen A doesn't like LeBron and has never liked LeBron as a person, so that's been impacting his reporting. and Stephen A was the one who was trying to claim it wasn't personal, but it got exposed that it was. He was talking crazy about LeBron on his show, calling him a liar. He went out of his way to talk about Bron when there were other stories to talk about basketball-wise. But Stephen A is more so entertainment than basketball. If he was more basketball-focused, he would have talked about Josh Giddey and how he's been good for the Bulls recently, or how strong of a contender he thinks Boston is. He didn't do that because his reporting isn't grounded in love for the game, but personal beef with guys like LeBron. And although it's true that the media also disrespects today's league, there are players of the past who've disrespected the players who are playing right now, specifically Draymond Green, and he called the person who was disrespectful to him out on his podcast.
Just a month and a half ago, Oscar Robertson said, "I do nothing on the basketball court." Yeah, I got a chance to put on the same jacket he put on. But he said, unprompted, like I didn't say anything about Oscar Robertson. I didn't say anything about players from his generation. But to say I do nothing on the basketball court, like, that's either disrespectful or dumb. Like, it's one of the two. Like, you're either being disrespectful or you're not smart. So you pick.
So I kind of understand where Draymond Green is coming from, and I'm realizing why he's bringing up how older players don't respect his generation, and it's probably because he's still upset about how Oscar Robertson basically called him useless, which isn't true. Sure, Draymond isn't the most skilled player in the world, but he played his role and is a multiple-time NBA champion. The only thing is, this clip needs more context. You see, Oscar said what he said about Draymond, not because Draymond said something negative about Oscar's era, but because Draymond said something negative about the current state of the league, and Oscar Robertson was just trying to defend it. Draymond was trying to call the league boring, and I'll show you exactly what he said.
I think it's very boring. Who can run faster? Who can hit more threes? It's no substance. It's not smart basketball no more. I saw a clip not too long ago where Kobe said, like, yo, it's accidental basketball. He couldn't have been more right. It was so refreshing to play against Bron because every possession is like a chess match. But you don't just get that on a regular basis. It's just who can run faster, who can hit more threes. It's no substance. And so I think it's very boring.
I don't understand why Draymond would say something like this, because he's insulting the brand of basketball this Warriors team has been playing for so long. They literally run fast and shoot a bunch of threes. So I don't know why he would call out basically his own teammate Steph Curry shoots a ton of threes. So is Draymond saying that watching Steph is boring? I don't think that's what Draymond meant to say, but it can be taken that way. And so Oscar Robertson was trying to defend today's NBA, and you might not think that was possible, but if you watch the clip, you'll see what I mean.
Draymond said so much, who cares what Draymond says? It doesn't mean anything. People, this is what I mean, one guy can say this and one guy can say that. The game is what it is. People either like the game or they don't, and I think people enjoy the game, especially if their team can win. And you look at the basketball, it might be boring to him because if he's not passing the ball to Curry, what is he doing?
I agree. Triple single is
not to single that out because I think he knows how to play basketball, but he's passed his ball to Curry more than anyone I've ever seen in basketball.
Okay, so I've already addressed that Oscar was probably undervaluing Draymond here and what his actual role is. But if you think about it, this is not a good example of an older player hating on the new generation. Because in this case, Draymond was the person being negative about the state of the league, and Oscar Robertson was the guy trying to be more so positive about the direction things are going. Sure, he insulted Draymond, but at least his heart is in the right place, as he's trying to give a nod of respect to today's league. There are actual good examples of older players hating on the newer ones, but this one isn't it. I really don't understand why Draymond was hating so much, but he's been making it a habit. I remember watching the All-Star game, and he was asked what he would rate the game out of 10, and he gave it a 0. And I was like, what am I watching? Did he really just say that about his own sport? So while there definitely is a problem with older players hating on today's league, I can recognize that the whole situation with Draymond and his dislike of the new All-Star game format didn't help either. Still, my perspective on this topic remains the same. there is definitely some negative energy out there about the NBA landscape going on. But what do you think? Do you side with Stephen A. or Draymond Green? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.